Hi, let's talk about sex, but globally. Now, as someone who travels quite often, I am always learning how different cultures handle sexuality. And I can tell you that in many parts of the world, it's not such a big secret. It's just a healthy part of life. Now, in this video, I'm gonna share with you the top 5 most open-minded countries in the world when it comes to sexuality. And stay tuned because later I'm gonna share with you how you can get a little bit more in-depth first-hand look into how these countries handle sexuality through my personal experiences. Hello everybody, if you are new to my channel, welcome. My name is Ali. I'm a sex education student, and on this platform we have some casual conversations about sex, relationships, and other fun stuff. And if you've seen some of my content so far, you do know that I love to travel and I love talking about sex and relationships, so I like to merge the two. And I've done a few videos so far where I'm talking about sex in different countries. I've traveled to a few countries where I started leaning more into the sex culture and education on my trips. And if you're interested in learning more about that stuff and coming along with me on my travels, then you can check out my Patreon. I'll link it in the description below and I'll tell you a little bit more about it more later on. All right, so let's get right into the list. And number 1, a lot of you might not be that surprised at, we're starting with the Netherlands. So the Netherlands are known for their legal sex work, their inclusive laws, and arguably the most progressive sex education in the world. Here's a fun fact for you. Dutch kids start learning about consent, pleasure, and relationships as early as the ages of 4 to 6. They were also the first country to legalize same-sex marriage in 2001, so they have a very high LGBTQ+ acceptance and are generally a very sex-positive culture. So why does this work? So studies show that Dutch teens have fewer unintended pregnancies and STIs. And this is not because they're having less sex, it's because they're just better informed. Imagine if the rest of us would follow their lead. So my take is that they treat sex as a natural part of life and health and not as something taboo. And it shows. But of course, there are always some cons to consider. So I am not referring to the entire country of the Netherlands. There are definitely some certain parts that are a little bit more conservative, such as the Bible Belt, which is, I believe, more in the south, where, for example, men are still the biblical heads of the household. Women are expected to dress modestly and stay home and avoid things like loud music and dancing. Sexual activity is reserved for heterosexual marriages. Now, I didn't know about the Bible Belt until I actually met someone from the Bible Belt. So I'm gonna go on a little bit of a tangent here and tell you a story, because if you watch my videos, you know I love to share stories. But Gab and I were in Mexico. This was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and we met a girl online through an app, and we invited her over for dinner and, you know, maybe some playtime afterwards. And she was from the Netherlands and she was from the Bible Belt. And it was the first time we'd ever met someone from that region before. We are used to traveling to Amsterdam because we have good friends that live there. So we've spent a lot of time in Amsterdam, which I know is probably one of, you know, the most progressive cities. The Netherlands is a big place. We haven't explored it that much. And, you know, she was a wonderful, nice young woman. And she told us that she fled the Bible Belt because she didn't believe in any of that stuff anymore. She got married when she was like 19. She was married for 10 years. You know, sex was taboo, dancing was taboo, loud music was taboo, and she was basically repressed most of her life. So she decided to break away from that and move to Mexico and start the spiritual journey and meet couples online and have fun and so on. Spoiler alert, no, we did not have sex. We did kiss a little bit though. And anyway, she was very nice. But yeah, she told us about the Bible Belt, and yeah, if it wasn't for her, I probably would have never known about it firsthand. Anyways, I would have read about it eventually. But yeah, thanks to her, she opened our eyes in terms of letting us know that not all of Dutch culture is progressive. And also another con is that schools have a lot of freedom in terms of how they decide to teach sex education. As a result, the quality varies widely on what resources are available and also the teacher's comfort level. So even though, you know, we're saying that the Netherlands has the most progressive sex education in the world, if you have a teacher that is a little bit more conservative and traditional, then, you know, maybe you won't be getting the same sex education as another classroom where a teacher is a little bit more open, you know? So there are still some areas to be improved in the Netherlands. Nowhere is perfect, but aside from that, they are still considered as one of the most sex positive cultures with their, you know, legal sex work, nude beaches, and open dialogue. All right, number 2 is Sweden. So I haven't recently visited Sweden. I was in Stockholm about 12 years ago and I was with an ex-boyfriend. So I wasn't really in the sexploration phase of my life. I don't really remember much of Sweden other than the Absolute Vodka Museum and learning what Stockholm Syndrome was. But Sweden is known for teaching sex education as of kindergarten. They also have a very relaxed attitude when it comes to porn consumption, and they are well advanced with their LGBTQ+ rights. So the Swedes rank high with their sexual satisfaction and their equality. They also embrace kink more openly with their public events like Stockholm's Fetish Fair. And here's a fun fact for you. Over 70% of Swedes are completely comfortable in talking about their sexuality with their friends and their partners. And another few little facts for you. They legalized same-sex marriage in 2009. They have gender identity protection, and they have IVF access. But there is one caveat still with Sweden. In terms of their sex workers' rights, it still remains illegal to purchase sex, but is not illegal to sell sex. So this definitely still leaves sex workers highly stigmatized and also imposes a lot of safety and security risks for them. Meaning that because it's illegal to buy sex, it forces them to rush negotiations or meet clients in not necessarily the safest kind of places, which definitely has an impact on their security. And number 3, we have Canada, my country, where I'm from, and I was very happy to see Canada on this list. Because us Canadians are quite sex positive, okay? We may not be yelling it from the rooftops, but we are all about consent, respect, and open dialogue. And honestly, some of us are, a little bit spicy, a little bit kinky, and according to the Daily Hive, I don't know how reputable this source is, but Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver are in the top 15 most sexually liberated cities. So Canada is known for their high LGBTQ+ acceptance. Inclusive sex education, though it varies by province, and there are some issues in there as well. Similar ones, as I mentioned, in the Netherlands, where schools are often given freedom with the curriculum. So it depends who's teaching it, who the principal is, and their biases and their judgments and so on. So there's some issues there. And we also have the decriminalization of sex work. However, Canada follows the same model as Sweden. They call it the Nordic model, which means that it is illegal to purchase sex, but not illegal to sell sex. So even though they impose this model to try and, protect the sex workers, limit the amount of sex workers that you see on the streets and so on, it doesn't really work that well, because again, as I mentioned, you are still putting the sex worker at risk by, rushing negotiations, meeting in unsafe places. And again, the stigma's still there. Can't get away from it. However, us Canadians, we are polite, but we are not shy about our sexuality, especially in the hubs, like I mentioned, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, great cities. I mean, I'm biased because I'm from Montreal. Montreal, I would say, is the better one. If you haven't visited, you should. We got a lot of kinky stuff here because Montreal used to be known as the Sin City of Canada. I actually made a video about Montreal Sin City. If you want to know more about that, you can check out the video. But yeah, Montreal has got a lot of great Sin City red light district history. And again, the caveats, as I mentioned, in terms of sex education, some provinces still avoid topics like trans, LGBTQ+, and focus on risk instead of pleasure. So if you're in Quebec, you can get a very different experience than if you're living in Ontario. All right, number 4, we got Iceland. And I'm very sad because I was supposed to go to Iceland this year for a sex education trip with my school, the Sexual Health Alliance, because every year they organize 4 study abroad trips. And I went to Prague and Amsterdam at the beginning of this year, an amazing, immersive sex culture and education trip. If you want to know about my experience, you could check out my videos on YouTube. And if you want all the in-depth vlogs and all insight into all the really cool activities we did in real-time updates, you can check them out in my Patreon. That's where I post a lot of the in real-time vlogs and so on. And it's just an incredible experience. And the trips are open to everyone, not just people in the program. So if you are interested in checking out the Sexual Health Alliance study abroad trips, I highly recommend it. And this fall, they're going to Iceland, and also number 5 on the list, which I'm going to get into in a moment. So stay tuned. I'll put the links in the description below so you can check them out. Now, what is Iceland known for in terms of sexual openness? Gender equality, open attitudes towards sex, and a total lack of sexual shame. Iceland even had a feminist porn film festival at some point. And here is another unique fact for you guys. Because Iceland's population is so small, there's literally an app to make sure you're not accidentally dating your cousin. Yes, you heard me right. It's known as the Book of Icelanders app. So it's a mobile application designed to help Icelanders avoid accidental incest by checking for family relationships between users. How crazy is that? So the app leverages a database of Icelanders and their family trees going back 1,200 years to warn users if they are too closely related. So my take is that Iceland is sometimes cold in temperature, but hot when it comes to sexual norms. They have among the highest rate of LGBTQ+ acceptance over all of Europe, and dating culture is described as liberal and open. Casual sex, relaxed norms, and sexual equality. Y bueno, la última en el listo es España. Sí, puedo hablar español. I will try to say this in Spanish now. Es conoce para el pasión, es abierto y pleasure-forward intimacy. I don't know how to say that in Spanish. Basically, what I was saying is that they are known for their passion, their openness, and yes, their pleasure. So sex isn't scandalous in Spain. It's a part of a vibrant, expressive culture. In 2023, Spain launched the National Sexual Health Strategy, centered around pleasure and consent and not just around disease prevention. So conversations about sex are super casual and self-expression is embraced. In terms of sex education, comprehensive sex education has been mandatory since 1990. So what is still lacking? According to some statistics, Spanish students still showed elevated risky behavior and less awareness of safe sex protocols, for example, when it comes to STIs. My take is that Spain has that beautiful Mediterranean blend of sensuality and safety. They value connection, emotional and the physical. And yes, Spain would have been the other country that I would have been visiting along with Iceland with the Sexual Health Alliance this fall, but unfortunately I cannot go. So perhaps next year I'll be on the Sexual Health Alliance study abroad trips. Again, I will link them in the descriptions below. So what have we learned from all of these countries? Number one, sex is treated just like any part of your health and your identity. Number two, openness doesn't lead to chaos. It leads to confidence, safety, and joy. Number three, consent, pleasure, and education are non-negotiables. And most importantly, pleasure is a right and not a reward. And by the way, if you're interested to know what it was like to be in some of these countries and some other countries that I didn't mention in this list, I've got travel stories and some behind the scenes sexy ones too over on Patreon. So you'll find some stuff from Amsterdam, Prague, Japan. So if you want to check that out, you can by clicking on the link below this description. And if you do join my Patreon, I just want to say thank you because you really motivate me to continue learning and continue sharing all the interesting sex, pleasure, relationship stuff that I'm learning with you all. So what I want to know is which country surprised you the most? Which ones have you visited? Which ones do you want to visit? And did their attitudes around sex shock you, inspire you, or excite you? Let me know, drop it in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think. And thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Au revoir, adios, hasta luego, je vous aime. Besos.